Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Jamie Photography. So in this video, we're going to do an extreme day to night. That means we're going to take this bright sunny day shot here, blue sky, and we're going to turn it into a nighttime shot. Something that people, if they didn't know it was a post-process image, would think it was a real nighttime shot. So it's just a bit of fun. But what we're going to do is I'm going to take you through that process of how we get from this using Lightroom. I'm going to also use Luminar to add the sky for me as well, because I'm going to do a sky replacement as well. But most of the work will be done in Lightroom. So this image was shot recently, a lovely little English village in Wiltshire called Castle Combe. Beautiful place. They look after these little villages. They don't allow signposts to be put up everywhere and road markings and everything. They try to keep it as original as possible, and as you can see from this image, it's a beautiful place, and the village runs right the way up through the hill here. It's a great place to visit if you ever do come. So where do we start? Well, my workflow always starts with perspective as the first hit. So we'll go down to transform on the right hand side. If you want to follow along and copy what I'm doing in one of your own images, feel free to stop and start the video as we go through. So because I'm going to keep moving forward all the way through. So we're going down to transform. In transform, we have a number of options. I like to use guided. The reason being that I have control over the perspective. So this door here, I want this door to be vertical. So I'm going to take a line from the bottom there, left click the mouse, draw the line up to the top, and then let go of the mouse. So now that's one I want straight, and the other one I want straight is probably this bridge pier here. So I'm going to the edge of that bridge pier, As you can see, it straightened it up. It's actually cut a little bit of the doorway away there by doing that. If I just escape that and go back to where we were. Yeah, it's quite tight on that door, doorway. So I'm going to try that again. So go back into guided. Make sure I've got the line switched on. So I've got that one line on the door, got that one over there. So yeah, I think I'm going to go forward with that. You can use a horizontal as well if you wanted to, going from left to right. If you had a horizon, for example, you could use that to give yourself a perfect level coming across. So you can have up to 4 lines. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to accept that. Crop wise, just going to go into the crop tool. Just going to take a little bit off the edge of that bridge there, just so we don't have a distraction on the very edge of the bridge. And I'm going to bring the bottom up just a little bit. To see if we can get to a 16:9. 16:9 is quite a tight crop, so maybe a 16:10 would give us a slightly better. Let's bring that in there like that. Yeah, I think 16:10 works well. So I'm going to OK that. So I've got the perspective done. I've got my crop done. Now I'm going to go into the basic module here. And I'm going to just move a few sliders around to get us ready for the sky replacement and ready to start the day tonight. So I'm going to back off the saturation just a little bit because at night the light is very monotone and you don't tend to get a lot of color reflection. I'm going to open up the shadows completely, just maybe about 80% actually, because there's quite a lot there, just so I've got a little bit more light to play with here. And then I'm going to probably leave the highlights where they are for now, because we're going to do the sky replacement. Just going to add a little bit more contrast, so the difference between the sky and the trees becomes more apparent to the software when we change over. And I'm just going to back off the clarity just a little bit, back to about -10. So that's good. So with that done, I'm going to now go over into Luminar. So I'm going to right click. I have Luminar installed as a plugin to Lightroom. So it doesn't matter which one you use, Luminar 4, Luminar AI, Luminar Neo. The sky replacement module is very similar. Personally, I prefer Luminar 4. It has more flexibility, whereas Luminar Neo tends to be more of a one-click wonder to get to where you want to be. So I'm going to click on Luminar 4. I'm going to edit a copy with the Lightroom adjustments. And that's going to just now open Luminar 4, import this image in to Luminar 4. Here we go. Now in Luminar, they tend to have very similar functions to Lightroom. To be fair, they are put in the menus slightly differently. But what you'll find is you have an Essentials menu, which is what we're seeing at the moment, and below it you have Creative. If you click on Creative, you get a different set of menus here, and you'll see once you're in Creative that AI Sky Replacement appears. I always click on Advanced Settings. I want all of the features available to me to manipulate the sky as we install it. So I'm going to click on Sky Selection. These are the standard ones that come with AI, but I'm going to go down to Load Custom, and then I'm going to go down into Skies, and I've got 4 Milky Way shots here. Now on Mac OS, you can, if you highlight, when you're in a selection like we are now, if you highlight a particular image like I've done here, I can then just press the space bar to see what it is, and I can just look through the images to see which one I'd like to use, and I think I'll probably use that one. Maybe, yeah, I think I'm going to go with number 4. Yeah, so I'm going to click open. Now you can use higher res photos to import, and you can use DNGs if you want to import them into these shots. So but just for the sake of convenience, I'm using this JPEG to go in here. So now it's imported it in. One of the things I want to try to look at is the relighting of the scene, because it's very bright down the bottom here, it's very dark at the top, and if I bring the slider across all the way, you can see that it darkens down the scene here and keeps the sky quite bright. That's too much, obviously, so I'm just going to bring that back a little bit, probably around about 80, because what it makes this look like is a little bit like moonlight. What I do want to be sure of is that we've got a nice fill. So I'm going to zoom in to the areas to see, and you can see there's a little gap there between the chimney and the tree. So we're going to need to try to move the sliders to compensate for that. So we can use the close gap slider by moving that to the left. That often helps. There we go. That's managed to get the sky to fill all the gaps. That actually works very well, actually. I don't think I'm going to need to do much more. Nope. So I'll zoom back out. So probably I can avoid any other. I'm going to just probably get rid of blending, horizon blending, which tends to bring a bit of blending in there. You do have a flip sky tick box here. You can click that and change the direction from left to right if you wanted to do that. Actually, I prefer it on that side, so I'll keep it there. And then you also have sky temperature and exposure, so you can actually make the sky darker. Because we've got the relight set so high, it will make the overall scene darker as well if you do move that across. But for now, I'm going to leave that where it is. Temperature wise, we can add a little bit more color to the sky, depending on how much we want to make it look natural. You know, quite often these days, street lights in the distance will add an orange glow to the sky. If you've got a very clear no sky street light pollution, you tend to get more of a bluer sky. So but for this, I'm going to just add a little bit of orange to that. So I'm happy with that, so I'm going to apply that, and that will send it back into Lightroom for us as a TIFF file, which is still a 16-bit file, so it still has the depth of a DNG. So we'll be able to manipulate the image. So I'm going to just turn off the details there for now, and now we'll start the processing. So the key here is we need to make the scene look like this is moonlight. So I'm just going to open the shadows up a bit more, bring down the highlights just a little bit, and I think what we'll do is just bring the exposure down slightly. I'm happy with the clarity at the moment and the contrast. It's looking pretty good. So the image is quite dark, but the real key for me for working in day to nights is to relight the scene using masks. And my favorite tool of all is the radial gradient. It's a fantastic tool. So I'm going to select that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make quite a large radial over here on the bridge. Just adjust that slightly. And then I can just bring up the exposure a little bit on the bridge, as though the moonlight's coming from top right downwards. It would also light the water underneath, so I'm going to duplicate that, move that down there, reshape that as well, make it a little bit smaller, there we go, and a little bit less, the reflection will lose some of its brightness, so that's good there. And then I'm going to create a new mask here as well, another radial gradient, and I'm going to light these houses on this side, so I'm going to bring that right across there just to bring this up. So I'm, rather than moving the exposure up this time, because it's very bright here, I don't want to, I just want to raise the darker areas. So within that radial filter, I'm just going to open up the shadows and just bring up the exposure just a little bit, just to pick up that area there, ready for us to put our artificial lighting in. So that's pretty good. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So what we'll do now is we'll start to add some artificial light to the scene. So creating a new mask, new radial gradient, and I'm just going to zoom in onto the right hand part of the screen here, and we're going to oh, actually before I do that, what I think I should do is just put the reflection in the water of the sky. I think that would be a good thing to do. So just before we continue any further, I'm going to right click, edit in, and send this over to Photoshop so that we can edit a copy using Lightroom adjustments. We want to use what we've got there, so edit that. So I'm going to throw this over into Photoshop. So I'm keen to get a reflection in this water area, because obviously this beautiful sky up here would be reflected down here. To do this, we unlock the top layer, we right click on it, and we duplicate this layer. Okay, the next layer we can call reflection, and we're going to pop that at the bottom, so that's behind the image that we can see at the moment. So if we want anything to come through, we're going to need on the top layer to apply a layer mask and paint in this area, which is what we're going to do. But before we do that, we need the reflection to provide a reflection. So if I switch off the top layer, and then I select all here, so I can Control or Command A to select everything, and then Control or Command T to have free transform. Right click on the screen, okay, and down the bottom you will find flip vertical. So that flips the image vertically. Now what I want to do is look at where that reflection is actually going to sit. So I need to be able to see through the top layer to see where this one's going to go. So I can either move the reflection back to the top, or I can switch the top layer back on so the reflection disappears because it's behind. But while selecting the top layer, I go into blending modes and I select screen. Okay, so now I can see 50% through the top layer to see the bottom layer. Now if I go to the selection tool and I move, sorry, I need to go to the reflection, not the top one. I click on reflection, there we go. So I'm on the, I will now move the reflection, and you can see the bridge through. So what I want to be able to do is make the sky appear in the bottom there. So actually works quite well if I just select it there. I could put more reflection in if I wanted to, but actually I'm just going to leave it where it is. You can see that this beautiful bit of the sky there is showing on the water. So I'll go back to the top layer, switch the blending mode back to normal, and on that top layer I'm now going to add a layer mask. So I'm going to click layer mask, which is this little flag down here with a circle in it. Now white conceals, black reveals. So at the moment white's not letting anything through from behind. So I need to have a black brush. So you can go down to your paint palette over here on the left hand side, and normally it's set to black and white when you've selected a layer. If it's not, you can click on the color and go down to the very bottom left corner to get black. If you want to change these over, you can use this little arrow that's here to change from white to black, or you can press X to move from black to white or white to black. So I want black and I want a brush. I can click brush here, or I can just press B and that will select the brush. Now the brush, I want it to, I don't want it to be too much of a feather. I need it to be quite hard because I'm going to draw quite close to the edge. So I'm going to go about 80%. And the flow is going to be quite low, about 50%. Sorry, the occupancy 50%, the flow 50%. So that we can just paint it in very gently. So I may even back off the flow to 40%. Okay, there we go. And now I can actually paint, because it's selected up here in the top right. I can paint black into that white layer mask there. So I'm just going to zoom in by using the Option key and wheeling my mouse a couple of times. Hold down the space bar to move the image to a good position. So now I've got the brush. I can literally click once here, hold down the Shift key and click again to get a straight line along the edge of this bridge. Same again there. I'm going to go down to here this time, and you can see it's bringing through the reflection. So I'm just going to take that into there, and I'm just going to come up here, do the same thing, Shift, and just pick out those areas there. Make my brush a little bit bigger now, and I can just come in there and paint in that and moving over using the spacebar just to get that reflection in there all the way along the edge of that bridge. Just blending that over from this side so it's brighter on this side. There we go. Happy with that. So now what I can do is I'm going to zoom back out again using the Option key there just to zoom back out. So you can see there is quite a nice reflection there. Way too detailed for the water as is. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to blur this slightly. And to do that, I'm going to select the reflection image. I'm going to go to Filter, and I'm going to go to Blur. And I'm going to put in a motion blur, which drags the image, in this case 90 degrees top to bottom, and it just blurs the image slightly into the water there. And I quite like a motion blur, very much what water does. It tends to bring a blur into the vertical. Okay, I'll select OK on that, and then I'm going to think pretty well accept that and put it back into Lightroom. So before I do that, I'm just going to hold down the Shift key, click on the other layer so both are illuminated, right click on them and merge the layers so we have a single layer. That just saves on memory in terms of the file size when you put it back into Lightroom. To put it back into Lightroom, I go File, Close, so I'm closing, but then I'm saving. So File, Close, Save. Well, as you can see bottom left, it's saving there now, and then it will take us back into Lightroom. So we now have the reflection in the water as well. So that's good. So let's add the artificial light to this scene. So we're going to go back into to Mask, grab a radial gradient. I'm going to start off with this light over here. So I'm going to put a radial gradient over the light, fitting like that. Let me zoom in nice and close onto that. And then I'm going to bring the exposure all the way up. My favorite trick to subtract from this radial gradient a brush, and that brush will be on 0 feather, 100% flow, and just go in next to the glass, click once, hold down the shift key, click again to get the straight line removal, click, and then so click, hold down the shift key and click again to get a nice straight line. So click, straight line, click. Make the brush bigger. You can do that using the square brackets next to the return key, or you can just wheel your mouse to make it bigger. Make sure you don't go over the area that you did. If you do by mistake go over it like this, you can just use Command or Control Z to go back to where you were. I also have this frame in here. I just want to do the frame as well, so I'm going to make my mouse smaller. I'm going to click once, hold down the shift key, click again to get the straight edge. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is add the lamp into the fitting. So I'm going to right click on the radial gradient that we had and duplicate it. Duplicate the mask, not the radial gradient, because that will mean that all of the work you've done removing the bits of the radial gradient you don't want will be copied over. Now we've copied that one over, I'm going to select it. This is the top one. We remember this is the one we've added, and I'm going to make it smaller. Okay, so what you'll see, and I'll just okay that, what you'll see is this lamp with the light bulb inside lighting up, so you get quite a natural effect. Now what we need to do is put the light onto the wall. So with another radial gradient, we will just pull one out, turn it to the same angle as the lamp. It's always very important. I'm not going to go quite as wide as that. And then I'm just going to bring up the exposure as though it was lighting the wall there. Now what you'll notice is because we're lighting the whole area, the previous masks have illuminated too much, and I'll show you what we'll do with that. But just for the moment, I'm just going to add a little bit of yellow to that shot, tiny bit of magenta, a little bit of clarity, because artificial light tends to have quite a high degree of contrast and a little bit of contrast. So now what we need to do is go back to the previous masks to get the balance right for this lamp. So we'll go back to the first mask we created there, mask 1. As you can see, if I hover over the mask, it shows you it's a lamp, and I can turn down the overall exposure, so we get back to where we were with the lamp. I'm just adding a little bit of noise reduction there, but we've now got this overall area, so we can go back to the main mask, as you can see, and it covers that whole area. However, this light fitting has a shroud on the top, and it would therefore not light upwards to a greater extent. There would be a shadow here. So to put that shadow in place, we make sure we're on the mask and we're selected onto the radial filter that's at the top. We go to subtract a brush, but this time we add feather. So we had about 75% feather, and we reduce the flow down to about 75%. There we go. And then what we do is we take reasonable size brush on top of this light fitting, just off to one side here. I'm going to click once, and then at an angle this light bulb and this shroud are at, so it would come from this point here to this point here upwards. So that's the angle we want to use. So we've got that pressed, so we'll do the same here. Hold down the shift key and we will add a shadow. We'll do it on the other side here as well. Same angle, 2, 3, comes across there, so we're going to go up like this. Yeah. Then we're just going to fill that bottom bit in there, make the brush bigger, and then do the same again, just cutting up and away, and then we'll just colour that in as it goes away. So we're removing the radial gradient. So if I just hover over there, you can see we've created that shadow as it comes away from the top of that lamp. So it would be back from the edge of the lamp because the lamp sticks out from the wall, so you just need to bear that in mind. There would be some light coming up behind, as you can see there. So I'm happy with that. There's a bit of light behind this drain pipe that's come across. You can see it's illuminated there a bit too much, so I'm just going to go back into that brush, but this time I'm going to reduce the feather down, increase the flow to 100, and just come on the edge of that drain pipe and then click and then shift click just to remove any light that we've got there. There we go. So I'm going to zoom back to 100. So what we have is a door with a light above it. Looks pretty good to me. I'm just going to add a little bit more color to that original mask, a little bit of yellow there, just to, and I'm just going to bring the exposure down just a little bit. There we go. So this light would light the top of the door as it is, but it also light the ground. So we do need to put a flood of light on the bottom here. So I'm just going to move the image over so I can get what I want to get in here. So create a new mask, a radial gradient, of course, and I'll come out a bit further, actually go back to fit. What I need to do with this radial gradient is this needs to go, the center needs to be under the light, right? The light fitting, because that's going to be the highest area of density for the light. So I'm putting that on the doorstep there. I'm then going to rotate this so it's at the same angle. As you can see, these houses going away at approximately 30 degrees from the horizontal, which means the light will be coming away from the horizontal minus 30 degrees, because that's the symmetry that we will have with that light. It's always worth taking time when you're out at night to just look at light fittings, look at the way light comes from windows, look at light from street lighting and from other, sign lighting, and just look at how the light pulls away from the fittings. It diminishes very quickly as you come away. And one of the mistakes I think people do make with day to night images is they tend to make their radials either too small or too bright, or they make them really big and they don't put any cutoff in. So you've got to try to find that balance. So my advice is take some time to go and look at how light comes from light fittings at night, even if it's just in your back garden. Switch the light on and have a look at how the light comes away, and it will give you the tools to know where to put the radial filters. So I'm going to bring this one out just a little bit further for now. I'm going to boost the light coming from it here. I'm going to add some yellow there to match the color of the lamp, and a little bit of magenta just to balance so it's not too greenish. So as you can see, there's the light coming away. It's actually slightly too much of an angle. I'm just going to back it off slightly there. As you can see, I might even bring it out further just to show that we're getting the light all the way out there, and a little even more orange just to see. There we go. So the pool of light coming out from there, lighting up the road as much as the doorway. The door's very dark. We will need to add some light there. So what I'm going to do here is, within this mask, I'm going to add a brush, and I'm going to put 100% feather. I'm going to put quite a low flow, about 35% flow, and take a relatively small brush, and I'm just going to paint in on that door just to light the doorway up as it comes around. I'm just going to add a bit more light there at the bottom as well. I'm also just going to brighten this up at the top a little bit more. There we go. So I can, because it's got a nice slow flow on it, you can add light to the scene quite easily. So that looks quite good. What we're also going to do is light one or more of these windows. So to light these windows, we're going to do the same as we always do. We're going to create a mask and a radial gradient. We're going to place that radial gradient over the window. Now, the mistake people make is they put the radial gradient in the center of the window. You need to think about where the light's coming from in the room, and the ceiling in this room is going to be up over here. So the lights are going to be up over there somewhere. So we're going to move this up that direction, pull this down so that we're getting the light diminishing coming from that side. We're going to put the exposure to 100. We're going to add in a little bit of color, a little bit of magenta just to balance it off so it's not too green. And then we're going to actually go in now and subtract a brush from this radial gradient, filter at 0, flow at 100, and I'm just going to go in and zoom in on that window. There we go. So we've got quite, I'm actually going to back the feather off just a little bit to about 10%. We've got quite a hard edge here. And we've got to think about the areas that would be totally in shadow, and they would be behind this edge of the window frame. So if I click once there and hold down the shift key and click again, I can draw a nice solid line along that edge. Same here, I'm going to click here and down there and click a nice solid line along that edge. Now on these bottom windows you have to be a bit careful because the light would come out onto that windowsill, but it wouldn't reflect on this external surface. So I'm going to click there and draw a nice hard line there. Same again on this side, the light wouldn't come around the corner. So we've framed out that window. I'm just going to make my brush a little bit bigger and just pick up around this this area here. Just hold the spacebar down to move, and then I'm just going to just do that. So I've got the window effectively blocked. I could even now, if I wanted to, zoom right out and remove that, but I'll do that at the end to take the rest of it away. So now what we need to do is we need to think about where the light would go inside. Now the front edge of this window frame would also be completely black, but I'm just going to increase the feather a little bit because we don't want too much of a hard edge. And I'm just going to click once, hold down the shift key at the bottom there, nice straight line, and I'm just going to put that edge in there. I'm also going to put the feather about 25 this time and back off the flow just a little bit to about 80%, and then I'm going to do the same for these windows. So you can always zoom in more. So I'll take that to 300%, and what we can do is we can see the lead in the window. So we can take a small brush that's no larger, so I'm just going to go down, that's probably too small, click once, hold down the shift key, click again, so you can draw in these window frames. Just doing that there. Once you get good at this, you can do it quite quickly. You literally click, shift, click to get the straight line. Makes life a lot easier. Can do the same on this window. I think we've got quite a big chunk there. Just coming over with the click and shift. So there's a little line up there. So I'm going to go one smaller. Just going to bring that one in as well as a there we go. So do the same over here. So one larger for that edge. A little smaller on that one. And then pick up these ones because they're quite small and quite dainty in that window there. So there we go. So we've blocked out the window. Now the real key here is we need to blend these edges. The light will fall away towards the edges. So to do that, what we do in the brush is that we have a little bit more feather, 50% feather, but we bring the flow down. So I'm going to bring the flow down to 40. I'm going to make the brush quite a bit bigger here because I want to brush right the way across there. So I'm just going to go to this corner here. I'm going to click once, and then I'm going to go over here, shift click again. Now you see how that adds automatically a drop in the brightness there. So I'm going to do the same coming down here all the way to the bottom. And you see how that drops down. Same on this edge here. There we go. Now, what we do need to do is blend these very sharp edges. So I'm just going to make this brush a little bit smaller, go half over that edge, and just start drawing up and down on these lines until it starts to blend more. I'm going to make the brush smaller again and just go on that line. So 50-50 over that line edge. And what you end up with is a beautiful blending of the light coming away from that window. I'm going to do the same for this top edge. This is going to be quite a tight one because there would be a lot of light coming out of there. And then one along the bottom here. I'm just going to come up a couple of sizes there just to blend that bottom one in. You see how that works very well? I actually want to just put that one across the top there, just to finish off that framing. There we go. Now that's pretty well it, but you would get some shadows from this window frame, from this leading onto here. So we're going to go still in that brush. We're going to put the feather up to about 50, and we're going to bring the flow to about 50 as well. Make a small brush. Now think where the light is. So we can say it's where this dot is that we've got, or we could think it's a bit further up over here. So wherever you're going to pick, you need to make that your reference point. So I'm going to go with the dot. So taking that dot, this point, and a line, that would show the shadow would come across here. So using the brush, I'm going to click once there, coming across at that line. I'm going to go out to that edge there and click again. You see how you get a little shadow? Now this one, the light's going to be up, probably the same thing again, but it's going to be a bit further back. So I'm actually just going to bring that down at a bit more of an angle. This one will be more of an angle, and the bottom one will be quite an angle to show that the light's coming through. We do the same over here, so same angles that we had for the previous ones. Here we go, so that it matches. And we just drop that one down the bottom there, so you get the shadow coming away from the window. So yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm very happy with that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to drop back to 100%, and I'm just going to take the rest of this filter away. So we bring the feather back down to 0, the flow back up to 100. Nice big brush, and then we can just work our way around. Shift click, shift click, shift click in straight lines, just to make sure we've got rid of everything. Go all the way out to fit, just to make sure we don't have anything left. And if you want to check, you can hover over the mask and you can see there is a little bit up there on the chimney, so I'm just going to get rid of that. Yep, that's pretty good. So if I wanted to make the room brighter, because we're already at 100% on exposure, you can just click on the actual radial gradient itself, right click and duplicate the mask, not the radial gradient, because obviously you want to keep the masking that you've put all the work in on. Now 2 at 100% is too bright, but the top one we could reduce down, and if we took it to 0, that would mean we'd have one window's worth of light before, and as we come up we can make it brighter. You see, so we can make that window quite a bit brighter. Let's come back off there, bring the magenta up a little bit to try to neutralize the green that's in there. That's good. And yeah, I'm quite happy with that. Not too bright, a little bit of clarity, just there we go. Actually, do you know, I might even back the clarity off a little bit, just to give it all a little bit of a lighter look there. There we go. Now that window is going to cast light down here, so we do need to move a radial gradient down. So I'm just going to grab that top one, and I'm going to duplicate the radial, not the actual mask itself, because we've been painting around here. And I'm going to bring this down here. Just going to bring it round a smaller, and then where that light's going to come, it's going to end up over here somewhere around there. And I'm just going to back that magenta off. You can see that magenta. So that's looking pretty good, pretty good. Now I want to put a light inside this doorway. You see we have a little porch here. So you're going to like this. This is quite clever. I'm going to zoom in on this porch. So the light's going to be up under here somewhere. All right, I don't believe there's one on the front there. So we're going to create the light coming down. So I'm going to grab a new radial gradient. Let's move this down a second. And I'm going to make a big one. And I'm going to put the center where the light bulb would be, back towards the door, under the porch, somewhere around there, like so. And now I'm going to subtract a brush. I'm going to have a little bit of feather, 10% feather, 100% flow, and I'm going to remove the radial gradient where the light would not be. So it's going to be along this edge. So click, shift, click, click, shift, click to get those straight lines. Same there. Okay. I didn't like what it did at the bottom there, so I'm going to Command or Control to undo. The light's going to come out the bottom there a little bit more, so I'm going to bring that down to about here, and then we'll blend that out. So I'm just going to remove the rest of that for now. I'm going to leave the light coming out the bottom, and we'll deal with that in a second. So just removing that radial gradient there. I'm just going to take away the rest of it. Right, so we now have a mask inside that doorway, right? So I'm going to go back into that zoom, go back into 100%. So I just want to blend this mask away at the bottom here. So I'm going to bring up the feather to 100%, just take the flow off slightly, and then I'm going to take a smaller brush and I'm just going to wash the rest of this away, but gently, so we've got a feathered edge coming out of that doorway. Same here where these flowers are. Just a nice feathered edge coming away from that doorway. Now, if I bring up the exposure, voila! You literally have turned the light on inside the porch. Really, really good. I'm going to bring up some yellow there, just and a bit of magenta, just to colour that a little bit. We would get more light out here, so I'm going to add, this time, a brush, and going to have feather at 100 and flow at about 50, so I can just add a little bit more. That's a bit strong. Command or Control Z to undo that. I'm just going to go back in there to add brush. Add brush. I'm going to reduce the flow down to 30%, still with a big feather, and I'm just going to build that light up there, coming out of there. It's too strong still, so I'm just going to go back, and I'm just going to do that one last time. Add brush, a little bit less flow again, and then just pick that area there being illuminated by the door. So happy with that. It's a bit on those flowers there, a bit more on those plants, and I'm just going to add a bit of yellow, a bit more yellow to that. There we go. So that gives you light coming from the doorway. I just think that looks quite good as well. So it's quite nice, just adding a little bit more light over that way, just to make it look reasonably good. Right, just going to pop over. I think that's a bit bright, you know. I'm just going to back that one off just a little bit. There we go. Don't want it too bright. Now, normally I'd do probably most of these windows, but for now I'm going to leave those windows over there. I'm going to just pop in another radial gradient, as though there's a window just out of shot here that's creating some light as well, and just take that off axis slightly, and then just bring that up. Just going to take that further back. There we go. Bit of yellow in there, not too much. So we've got light coming in there. Yeah, looks good. Now I'd like to add some light to this building over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in, and so we can see those windows. Probably a bit close, so just come back to 100 for now. I'm going to add another radial gradient for the window. I'm going to put the light up to the left as though it's coming from there. I'm going to subtract the brush, as we always do, with feather at 0 and flow at 100. I'm going to zoom back in so we can get close into that window, see what we're doing, and then we're just going to go around the window as we've done previously. Actually, I'm going to go along the top on this one because there's a seal on the top of this one, window seal. So I want to go along there. I'm just going to come down the edge of that window. Come down the edge of that window. Now, these plants are going to be illuminated at the bottom, so we need to think about how to deal with those. So for the moment, I'm just going to go straight across from the bottom of the seal. And what we'll do is we'll paint those in gradually in a while. So big brush again, just to take the rest of that radial gradient away. Just going to zoom out for a second, take the rest of it away. So as you can see, we only have the radial gradient on the window. We're going to need to just bring up the exposure now, so it's nice and bright, not too bright. Yeah, probably about, well, I suppose we'll go full brightness for the moment. Just add some noise reduction, because there's a little bit of noise in that window. There we go. And then what I want to do is I'm just going to take some lines on these front leading edges, but I'm going to back the brush off just a little bit to on the flow, so it's not too dark. So we're just going to pop in there, down to there. Same again, click, shift click to get the straight lines, and then I'm going to go bring the flow down a bit more, and I'm going to go across these little windows here. There we go. Along around this window frame. It's nice. Same here. Just going around the window frame, just to click, shift click as always to get those straight lines. I'm just going to pop one in there as well. That's good. And then just going to put one into that little edge there and one into that little edge there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to bring the feather up a little bit. We're going to bring the flow down a little bit, and we're just going to blend these edges so they're not too bright. And the same with the windowsill along the bottom. And then just take the edge off of these. One there, just to take that edge off. So we're just using a low flow just to build up a softer edge on these window frames. As you can see, click, shift click, shift click, and you can just blend those edges away. So take a slightly bigger one in there just to pick up on that. It's quite bright in there, and the same across there. There we go. So those windows just one more on that one, I think. Because they're really, really hard edges. There we go. So that window's illuminated from within. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this radial gradient and duplicate the mask, so we keep all of the work that we've done. But this time on this top one, I'm going to highlight it and I'm going to make it smaller. Okay, so it looks like we have a light fitting in the room. So I'm just going to drop back to the previous mask, that one there, just bring up the highlights in there a little bit and the shadows, just to brighten that room a little bit more. Now if we jump back to fit, what you'll see, click done, is this window with the light inside it. Now it needs to be a little bit dimmer, but I am just emphasizing it for you so you can see. But if I go back to mask 7 and just back it down a little bit, you can see, because you can vary the amount of light that you want, and it looks quite natural then coming through there. So I think we're getting close to being done. What I will do is just add some light here and there, just to give it a more ambient sense. And I would go around and finish the rest of these windows. So I will do that after I finish this tutorial with you, and I'll post that as the thumbnail for this video, so you can see what the completed image looks like. But hopefully that's been useful to you. So let's just do that last little bit of light. So I'm going to create a mask, take a brush. This time I'm going to click auto mask. And what auto mask does is it allows you to stick with the brightness, color, contrast that you have on the area you started, so it doesn't bleed over into other areas. So let's take 100% feather. We'll stick with 40% flow. We'll put in some exposure and contrast and a little bit of clarity to this brush that we're going to use. And I'm just going to come down on the front of these trees, clicking where the leaves are, and just building a little bit more light up on this edge of the trees here. Look, just as though the moon is picking up there. I'm going to do the same on these trees over here, coming from that same angle, because we think the moon's coming up here, and I know you wouldn't really have a moon and a starry sky, but we're just having some fun and having a little paint within Lightroom. So I'm just going to put a little bit more on these buildings here as well. There we go. I'm just going to brighten this up a little bit as well, because once we've got that running, and I'm going to do the same for these bushes along here, in here. So what we're trying to do is create more contrast by dodging and burning different areas, so things stand out more than others. And maybe these trees at the back here could do a little bit as well. All trees over there, it's pretty good. Yep, it's looking pretty good. So I'm just going to accept all of those for now. Now, when you get to where you think you want to be, what you can always do is go back into your basics, and you can move your highlight slider to deal with your lights in the area. As you see, we can add more highlights in here. We can also still open the shadows or close the shadows more or less, so I can have a bit more shadow. I can have a little bit more on the highlights, just brighten those areas up. I can bring the color to it's slightly more blue, as though it's nighttime, and you can vary the clarity. You can take clarity away, gives it a softer look. You can add more clarity in to give it a harder look. Clarity is a very difficult one. I don't tend to use too much, but in this case I'm gonna add a little bit there. Gonna bring the saturation down one more time so that we've got that nighttime look, and I'm just going to bring the vibrance up, which is effectively color contrast, and pop the color over here so it looks pretty good. Tiny adjustment on the exposure, a little bit more contrast, and yeah, I don't generally use the whites and the blacks when we've got so little light in the upper area, because we've turned it into a nighttime shot. It's a very powerful tool, but it really deals with the top end of the histogram, as you can see up here. So if I use the white, it will affect the lights, you know, specifically. So I could use a little bit, but I don't really want to add too much. And the blacks obviously right down the bottom end as well, so maybe under the bridge in these areas we could darken those down a little bit just by bringing that down. Personally, I don't want to bring too much. I'm quite happy with that. So there you go. That's an extreme day tonight. I will show you the after image, which you shall see in the thumbnails. So if you've got any questions, more than happy to answer them. Pop them in the comments below. I'd appreciate a like. That's if you like what I'm doing, and if you wish, it'd be great if you subscribed. Help me build my channel. So for now, thank you very much. See you in the next video.